Hey guys, how's it going? Alright, I'm gonna try to remember to look at the camera today and not at myself in the viewfinder, because then I look weird and vain, but I am, so oh well. Alright, so this video is a long time in coming, and it's about self-esteem, and ironically, I'm gonna admit this freely, I've been trying to fix my hair for a couple weeks now because I started messing with it and, and I didn't want to film while I was in process. So I'm a little vain. I also have self-esteem issues, and we all do. I'm talking about this topic by request, and I keep looking up at a little board that I made with notes on it. It's very bright in here also. I didn't even need a light because there's so much sun. It's making me squint. There's a few topics I want to cover around this issue, and I didn't want to forget it, so I wrote it down. So if I look weird looking off in the distance, this will be the first time I've ever used a cheat sheet to make one of my stream of conscious videos. So self-esteem and our place in the world is, first of all, it's all an illusion, and I just want to say right up front, here it's really about the ego, and the ego is not real. The ego had an original kind of purpose that was valuable. It was kind of like what we talk about as fight or flight and things like this. It was a protective mechanism, like when we were trying to not get eaten by giant animals and such, we needed this sort of, I don't know how to like frame it correctly. I see it clearly in my mind, but basically it's hard to explain something that's not real, but it's sort of this voice that arrived as a mechanism, and instead of becoming more and more useful, it basically like got out of control with consumed by wanting to be the part of you that's in control. And over time we gradually stopped listening to the actual like higher self, or what we sometimes call the I am presence. And you can notice this really easily by just sitting quietly and watching the mind chatter. I've noticed this more and more in the last few years. I've been able to differentiate between the intuition and the ego, but it's super subtle and it's not that easy, and I still make mistakes all the time because we've listened to the ego for so long, and it's so crafty at being the one in charge that it's hard to tell the two like competing parts of you. Unless it's eminent, usually then your angels step in and they're like, yo, get out of the way. But the ego is a powerful control mechanism that just like superseded the plan. But honestly, it's also as simple to overcome because it's not real. It's not the us that is going to outlast this body. The spirit, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But basically, to notice the difference between the ego and the I am, just sit for a minute and just watch the thoughts that are happening in your mind, and then realize there's something that's aware of the thinking. There's something in your mind that's aware of watching the self-thinking, and that's the I am. That's the higher mind. So I'll just close my eyes and think about it for a minute. Like, what am I gonna do? My car broke down. This is the mind chatter, and the ego is worry, 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 stress, stress, stress. But there's something there also that can notice that these are just thoughts, and that thoughts aren't real. But thoughts are creating our experience. So we get into complicated territory here when we talk about reality and illusion, because reality actually is a grand scale illusion. And the problem in self-esteem issues or self-confidence is that we've let the ego be in control so long that we have almost been brainwashed into believing the reality we think is real based on what the ego tells us is not actual reality. Like, there's this word that Dr. David Hawkins uses to describe the phenomenon of wanting things that don't matter, and he calls it glamour. And I like this term because glamour is basically what the media and society have projected outward are the worthwhile goals. It's like, being beautiful, or having a nice car, or having a nice home, or having the career you want. And what's actually happening is that instead of just seeking for the things that are true, like joy and love and peace, we seek outside ourselves for something that we hope will give us these feelings. And that conundrum right there is like a vicious circle, because we think that if we get this certain thing, then we'll be happy, but we get it and then we're not. And so we just look for the next thing. And the media is right there to bombard you with the next thing that you need. It's in the magazines, it's on the internet, it's on the TV. You're not good enough, you're not skinny enough, you don't have a good enough job, you don't wear the right clothes, you need to lose weight, etc., etc., etc. It goes on and on and on, because someone's always trying to sell something. There's nothing wrong with selling or trying to make a living, because we live in a society that is money-based. The problem is like misdirection, misguidedness, like the consumer mindset, and the fact that money isn't even real. It's just something that stands in for what exchange really means. It's giving what you want to give your time to in exchange for, the things that you want to acquire. So if you're willing to go type up somebody's, I'm just simplify it and call a secretary or something for $10 an hour. So you're going to type up someone's business work. Then you've decided to exchange your each hour for $10. And the $10 is, it gets complicated, because if you really think about it, $10 doesn't mean anything. It means whatever anybody wants it to mean. It means, you could have an across-the-board agreement that, okay, well, silver is worth, $20 per ounce. I don't know what it's worth. But that's just an agreement based on supply and demand and what people are willing to give to it. And if people want it and there's a short supply, they're willing to pay more. And if they don't want it and there's a big supply, then they don't care. They'll pay a lot less. So you just get into this circle where if you look at it, you finally realize it's all nonsensical. Like, one person can say, hey, my time's worth $500 an hour because I went to college for this many years and I do this one specialized thing that not a lot of other people can do, and someone else can say, oh, I have no skills, so I'll just go sell hamburgers for $7 an hour because that's all I can do. But none of these things are true. Like, our vision of ourself and our self-worth is all based on things that are not real. They're all illusions. So really what self-esteem is a perspective. And if your perspective is flawed because it's based on media and societal expectations, then your self-esteem is going to be low. But if you realize all you need is really a perspective shift, like, first of all, creating abundance. You have to change your mindset. You have to realize that you're on a very abundant planet. Like, start to notice where you're abundant. Like, for example, everybody is very rich with air. We have all the oxygen that we need. Well, not really, because our planet doesn't have as much energy as some other planets, but technically speaking, you have all the air that you can breathe for the rest of your life. And this planet is pretty abundant in resources. There's enough food and water here for everyone to be rich. It's all mindset. If you think, well, I have to work for $10 an hour to get my food from the grocery store, then you might feel poor. But if you take a perspective shift and look around and realize the planet is covered in food and it's infinitely available to you, then you're rich in food. So really the perspective shift here is I'm combining two issues, because the question was concerning self-esteem related to job hunting. Why are you hunting for a job would be one question you might ask yourself. You could maybe redefine what value you have and what time you're willing to give and to what things. Like, you might be willing to... Here's the thing. None of us are doing... Not none of us, but very few of us are doing our life purpose in exchange for money. Myself included a lot of the time. But I find ways to do my life purpose and equate abundance to that. I'm paid back in other ways than just this illusion of money. Now, you might look at me and say, well, someone might look at me from the outside and say, well, she's not very abundant because she lives in a small apartment and doesn't own any land, But I look at what I've done with my life and I realize I'm very abundant with a lot of information. You have to find where you're abundant and focus on that, and also find what you want to do that brings you joy, because where you find joy, that's why you're here. That's your purpose. There's no second guessing it. When people say they don't know what their purpose is, they just haven't realized that their purpose is to be joyful, and they need to focus on those things. Like, here's another way we're bombarded with glamour. People think that purpose has to be something enormous, like, oh, I'm not Oprah, so I don't have a purpose. Like, Oprah just decided to be a journalist and wrote it as far as it can go. And we can all do that. We can all find a small, tributary of the purpose that leads to a stream, that leads to the river, that leads to the ocean. It's all available to all of us. But the problem is we're not basing our self-worth on what we're giving to the world just by being here and being joyful and being kind, or pursuing, passion. We're giving our own self-worth based through our ego on what we perceive that people think you're supposed to do to be purposeful. And that whole thing is flawed. One of the big reasons it's flawed is because of exactly what glamour is. It's a media projection that doesn't exist. Like, for example, to be like accepted in media as a powerful spiritual teacher, you are supposed to be perceived as perfect and not having any flaws. And so many people don't start the work of trying to inspire others or help others because they think they're not perfect yet. And we have this misconception that people who are successful are perfect because they have teams of stylists and agents and managers who speak for them and people who produce their image. And it's not real. They're the same people as us in the same broken system with the same health issues and conundrums and the same self-esteem issues and the same self-worth issues and the same all sorts of issues. Nobody is perfect and nobody has it figured out. If we had it figured out, this planet would be way more awesome, but we don't. So stop buying the illusion that this model of stop buying the perception that this model of perfection exists somewhere, because it doesn't. Like, I've been watching this show lately called Naked and Afraid, where they take two people and drop them off in the middle of nowhere. And the one thing I've noticed is that every woman on that show has cellulite on her ass. But the media projects that you're not supposed to have cellulite. And the media projects that there are these perfect women out there who have these amazing bodies that don't have fat or cellulite on them. But I'm telling you, I water fasted one time. I got down to 88 pounds at 5'2", and I still had cellulite. We have to learn to love the body. The body is nothing but a car that we're driving. It's not us. So we have to accept ourselves. Like, I'm going to get a little emotional because I have spent my life trying to accept myself, my body, and my worth, because the world projects lies. And you have to realize that. This world is not projecting the truth to you. So if you want to do something for your self-esteem and your self-worth, the most important thing you can do is ask for the truth. And the truth is that there's nothing here for us but love, and everything else is an illusion. And that's it for me today. Okay? Love yourself. You're worth it.